Welcome back to the VSOW YouTube channel
Oh, yeah?
for a deep dive into the world of Max Headroom.
All right.
You might know him as that AI TV host or maybe from that creepy 1987 broadcast hijacking incident.
Yeah.
But his story runs much deeper than that.
Deeper, yeah.
We're going to explore his creation, his cultural impact,
Okay.
and why he still fascinates us decades later.
Decades. Oh, wow.
Get ready for a trip back to the 1980s when the digital revolution was just beginning and fear and excitement about the future kind of went hand in hand.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They were really...
That's what's so fascinating about Max Headroom is how he really embodies that tension between those two things. You know, that fear and the excitement. He's this awkward, glitching figure, but he's also incredibly sharp and satirical.
Yeah, he's definitely a product of his time, but he also seems to speak to our anxieties about technology today,
Oh, yeah.
even more so in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why he continues to resonate. So to really understand Max Headroom, we need to go back to his roots, which lie in the rise of music videos and channels like MTV.
It's funny because the creators actually wanted something completely opposite to MTV's flashy, high-energy style.
Right. They envisioned Max as this sort of deadpan, almost boring talking head,
Yeah.
you know, like a stark contrast to the visual bombardment of music videos.
Right.
It was almost a joke, a commentary on the overstimulation of the era.
And yet he became a global phenomenon. What was it about Max that captured people's attention?
Well, I think it was a combination of factors. First, there's the novelty of his appearance. Many viewers actually believed that he was computer-generated,
Right.
which was incredibly impressive for the time, given that sophisticated CGI was still in its infancy.
Yeah, it's amazing how they achieved that computer-generated look using practical effects.
Right.
Can you talk a bit about that process?
Sure, actor Matt Frewer had to endure hours in the makeup chair,
Oh.
wearing a fiberglass suit and prosthetics to transform into Max. They used clever camera tricks, lighting, and video editing techniques to create the illusion of a digital being.
Oh, it's a testament to their ingenuity, especially considering the technological limitations of the 1980s.
Yeah.
I mean, they really pushed the boundaries of what was possible.
They did, and they even won a BAFTA award for graphics for their work on the original Max Headroom TV movie.
Oh, wow.
Which is interesting because the effect wasn't achieved through computer graphics at all. It was all practical effects.
Oh, that's ironic considering Max's whole persona is built around this idea of digital technology.
Exactly. It speaks to the blurred lines between reality and simulation that Max Headroom represents.
And beyond the visual aspect, there's also his voice and his mannerisms,
Yeah.
which are so distinct.
Yes. The stuttering, the pitch, shifts, the occasional looping phrases. It all contributed to this uncanny valley effect where something is almost human, but not quite.
Right.
And this played directly into the anxieties of the time about technology replacing us.
That's interesting that you mentioned the uncanny valley. Could you explain that term a little bit more for our viewers?
Sure. The uncanny valley is a hypothesis that describes our emotional response to artificial beings.
Oh.
As a robot or a computer-generated character becomes more human-like, in appearance and behavior, our affinity for it increases.
Okay.
But only up to a certain point. When it gets too close to human,
Right.
but still retains some artificial qualities, it triggers a feeling of unease or even revulsion.
Ah.
That's the uncanny valley.
And Max Headroom definitely falls into that uncanny valley.
He does.
He's both familiar and unsettling at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what makes him so compelling. He taps into this primal fear we have of being replaced.
Right.
Or even surpassed by technology.
It's a fear that is still very much present today, even more so with the rise of AI and automation.
Absolutely. But going back to Max's origins, it's also important to note that he wasn't just a visual and technological marvel. He was also a sharp social commentator, using satire to critique the media landscape of the 1980s.
He wasn't just introducing music videos, he was making fun of them.
Exactly.
Poking fun at the excesses of consumerism and celebrity culture
Right.
and the 24-hour news cycle.
Exactly. His humor was often dark and cynical, but it was also incredibly insightful. He held up a mirror to society, forcing viewers to question the messages they were being bombarded with.
And his satire wasn't limited to the world of music videos.
Yeah.
He became this broader pop culture commentator, appearing in commercials, starring in his own TV shows, even becoming a spokesperson for New Coke.
That's right. And it's interesting how his persona was so malleable,
Yeah.
so adaptable to different contexts. He could be a VJ, a talk show host, a corporate shill,
Uh-huh.
and yet he always retained that core identity, that satirical edge, that sense of being an outsider commenting on the absurdities of the world.
Even though his shows ended decades ago,
Hmm.
his influence is still felt in pop culture today.
Oh, yeah.
He's become a symbol of cyberpunk and dystopian fiction, a cautionary tale about the potential dangers of technology and media.
I think that's because he tapped into something fundamental about our relationship with technology.
Yeah.
He embodied both our fascination with the possibilities of the digital world and our fears about its potential to control and manipulate us.
It's like he was this digital mirror reflecting back our hopes and anxieties about the future.
Exactly.
We see his influence, for example, in Eminem's Rap God music video, where Eminem even takes on a Max Headroom-esque appearance.
That's a great example. And it's not just about the visual similarities.
Right.
Eminem's lyrics in Rap God also touch on themes of technology fame and the power of language, which are all elements that were present in Max Headroom's world as well.
Yeah, and then there's the movie Pixels, where Max makes a cameo appearance, solidifying his status as a pop culture icon.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how he's been reinterpreted and reimagined over the years.
Yes, and I think those reinterpretations speak to his enduring relevance. He's not just a nostalgic figure. He's a character who continues to provoke conversation and raise important questions about the role of technology in our lives.
So even though Max Headroom originated in a very specific cultural moment,
Yeah.
the 1980s, the rise of MTV, he's managed to transcend that moment and become something much larger.
He has.
A symbol of our ongoing anxieties about the digital age.
Precisely. And I think that's why we're still talking about him today.
Yeah.
He forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about our relationship with technology, even as he entertains and makes us laugh.
Now, we can't talk about Max Headroom without addressing one of the most intriguing and unsettling aspects of his story, the 1987 broadcast signal hijacking incident in Chicago.
Right. That incident is a perfect example of the blurring of fiction and reality that Max Headroom represents.
Yeah.
It's as if something from his dystopian world bled into our own.
And the fact that the perpetrators were never caught
Right.
only adds to the mystery and intrigue.
Yeah.
It's become a cultural legend inspiring documentaries, articles, and even fictionalized accounts.
It has. So to understand the significance of this incident, let's go back to that night in Chicago,
Okay.
November 22, 1987.
Right.
Two television stations experienced separate signal intrusions during their broadcasts.
Huh?
The first occurred during the sports segment of the 9 p.m. news on WGN-TV. The signal was interrupted for about 25 seconds.
And what did viewers see during that interruption?
They saw a person wearing a Max Headroom mask and sunglasses swaying back and forth in front of a rotating corrugated metal background.
Oh, wow.
It's like something out of a nightmare.
Was there any audio?
Oh, yes, there was audio, but it was distorted and difficult to understand. It sounded like muffled voices and electronic buzzing, adding to the creepiness of the whole thing.
And then there was a second intrusion, right?
That's right. About 2 hours later, during a broadcast of Doctor Who
Okay.
on WTTW, the PBS station.
Doctor Who. That's quite a contrast in programming.
It is, isn't it? This time, the masked figure was more animated, gesticulating wildly and even speaking, though the audio was still distorted and full of electronic effects.
So was he saying anything? Was there any meaning to his ramblings?
It was a jumble of phrases,
Okay.
some referencing Max Headroom's new Coke commercials,
Mm-hmm.
others seemingly random and nonsensical. The whole thing had a chaotic, almost daddyist feel to it.
Daddyist, like the art movement.
Exactly. Daddyism was all about rejecting logic and reason, embracing the absurd and nonsensical. And some people interpret the hijacking incident as a form of performance art, a commentary on the nature of media and the power of disruption.
So it wasn't just a prank. There could be a deeper meaning behind it.
It's certainly possible. The hijackers never revealed their identities or their motives, which has only fueled speculation and analysis over the years.
And it's interesting how the incident plays into Max Headroom's own themes. This idea of media manipulation, the blurring of reality and simulation, the potential for technology to be used for disruptive purposes.
Right. It's almost as if the hijackers were using Max Headroom as a symbol, a way to amplify their message, whatever that message might have been.
It's a perfect example of how a seemingly isolated event can ripple through culture,
Yeah.
sparking conversations and challenging our perceptions of reality itself.
Absolutely.
And even though we may never know who was behind it or why they did it, The Max Headroom hijacking incident remains this fascinating and unsettling enigma, a reminder that in the digital age, anything is possible.
And that's the perfect place to pause for now.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Max's origins, his satire, the hijacking incident.
Yeah.
But there's still much more to explore.
But we'll be back in a moment to delve deeper into Max Headroom's legacy and his enduring impact on pop culture.
Okay.
Don't go away.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Max Headroom. Before the break, we were discussing that unsettling broadcast hijacking. You know, it's amazing how much of an impact it had, even though no one really knows who did it or why.
Right. That's the power of mystery, isn't it? It captures our imaginations and makes us question everything.
Yeah.
But the incident also speaks to the unsettling nature of Max Headroom himself.
Right.
He was a figure who thrived on disruption,
Uh-huh.
on challenging our perceptions of reality.
And that disruption wasn't limited to a single event. It was embedded in his entire persona.
Oh, yeah.
From his glitching appearance to his satirical commentary. I mean, think about it. He even disrupted the very notion of what a TV host could be.
That's a great point. He wasn't a polished, reassuring presence like the traditional anchors we were used to. He was awkward, unpredictable,
Right.
and often downright unsettling.
Yeah.
And yet he was also incredibly intelligent and insightful.
It's like he was this glitch in the system.
Yeah.
Like a digital jester pointing out the absurdities of our media-saturated world.
Right.
And in a way, he was a harbinger of the digital age, foreshadowing the ways in which technology would continue to disrupt and transform our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the key reasons why he continues to fascinate us. Yeah.
He's a reminder that technology is not this neutral force. It can be used to manipulate, control, and distort just as easily as it can be used to connect, inform, and empower.
And he also makes us question our own relationship with technology.
Right.
How much do we control it, and how much does it control us?
Exactly.
These are questions that are even more relevant today in the age of social media, AI, and the metaverse.
You're right. Max Headroom was ahead of his time in so many ways. He forced us to confront these questions back in the 1980s, and they're even more urgent now.
Yeah.
Think about the way social media algorithms shape our news feeds.
Right.
The way AI is being used to create hyper-realistic deepfakes, the way we're spending more and more time in virtual worlds. It's like we're living in a Max Headroom episode.
It's almost too real, isn't it?
It is.
But getting back to Max himself, I think it's fascinating how his creators managed to pull off that computer-generated look without any actual CGI.
Right.
It was all smoke and mirrors, literally.
It really was a remarkable feat of ingenuity.
They used camera tricks,
Yeah.
lighting prosthetics, and even forced perspective to create the illusion of a digital being. And it worked brilliantly.
I've read that they studied early computer graphics extensively, trying to understand the visual quirks and limitations of the technology.
Right.
And they incorporated those elements into Max's design, making him look deliberately glitchy and imperfect.
That's right. They weren't trying to create a perfect simulation of a human being.
Right.
They were interested in exploring the uncanny valley, that unsettling space where something is almost human but not quite, and they nailed it.
They also put a lot of thought into his voice and speech patterns.
Yes.
The stuttering, the pitch, shifts, the occasional looping phrases, it all contributed to this sense of unease.
Right.
This feeling that something was off.
It's like they were playing with our expectations of what a computer-generated voice should sound like. They weren't going for realism. They were going for something more unsettling.
Right.
Something that would make us question the very nature of communication.
And it's interesting how they use those vocal quirks to create humor as well.
Yeah.
Max's stuttering and glitches often became punchlines, a way to subvert expectations and poke fun at the seriousness of the media landscape.
Right. He was a master of the unexpected. Just when you thought you had him figured out, he would throw in a glitch or a stutter that would completely change the tone of the conversation. It kept the audience on their toes and made him incredibly entertaining to watch.
And even though he was this artificial creation, he often came across as more human than the real-life talking heads he was satirizing.
That's true.
He was flawed, vulnerable,
Yeah.
and often self-deprecating, which made him strangely relatable.
I think that's what made him so effective as a social commentator.
Yeah.
He wasn't just pointing fingers and preaching. He was implicating himself in the critique, acknowledging the absurdity of the media landscape, and inviting the audience to join him in laughing at it.
And that laughter, I think, was a way of coping with the anxieties of the digital age.
Yeah.
It was a way of acknowledging that the world was changing rapidly, and we weren't sure what that meant for us.
Absolutely. Max Headroom was a safety valve, a way to release the pressure of those anxieties.
Yeah.
But he was also a provocateur,
Right.
a figure who challenged us to think critically about the role of technology in our lives.
And that challenge, I think, is his greatest legacy.
Yeah.
He taught us to be skeptical of the media, to question authority, and to be mindful of the ways in which technology can be used to manipulate and control us.
He was a digital jester, but he was also a prophet, warning us about the potential pitfalls of the digital age.
Right.
And those warnings are even more relevant today than they were back in the 1980s.
It's amazing to think that a character who started out as a joke, a parody of a talking head, could have such a profound impact on our culture.
Right.
He wasn't just a product of his time. He was a visionary who helped us understand the challenges and possibilities of the digital age.
And even though his shows ended decades ago, his legacy continues to inspire artists, writers, and filmmakers. He's become a touchstone for exploring the intersection of technology, media, and identity, a cultural icon who represents both our fears and our fascinations with the digital world.
You know, speaking of icons, I always found it fascinating that the name Max Headroom itself has such a mundane origin.
Really?
It comes from those signs in British parking garages that tell you the maximum height clearance.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. It's so ironic, isn't it? This character who embodies the vastness of cyberspace,
Yeah.
the limitless potential of technology, gets his name from a sign that literally limits your headroom.
It's like a metaphor for the way we try to impose limits on technology,
Right.
to control its power, even though it often feels like it's outpacing us.
That's a brilliant observation.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the anxieties that Max Headroom tapped into,
Yeah.
the feeling that we're losing control,
Right.
that technology is becoming this force that we can't fully comprehend or manage.
It's like he's a warning sign himself flashing in our collective consciousness,
Uh-huh.
reminding us to be mindful of the choices we make about technology and the consequences of those choices.
And those consequences can be both positive and negative, liberating and oppressive, depending on how we wield the power of technology. Max Headroom didn't offer any easy answers,
Yeah.
but he made us ask the right questions.
He made us think, and that's perhaps the most valuable legacy any cultural icon can leave behind.
Absolutely. And speaking of legacies, we can't ignore the fact that Max Headroom is making a comeback.
Oh, really?
There's a reboot of the series in development, which
What?
has a lot of people excited, myself included.
I'm curious to see how they'll update the concept for a modern audience. What will Max Headroom have to say about the world we live in today?
That's the big question, isn't it? How do you bring back a character who was so much a product of his time and make him relevant to a generation that's grown up with smartphones, social media, and AI as a constant presence in their lives?
It's a challenge, for sure.
Oh.
But I think it's one that the creators of the reboot are up to. They have a rich history to draw from, and they have the opportunity to say something meaningful about our current digital age.
I agree. And I think they'll need to address the themes of AI misinformation and the power of media, which are even more pertinent now than they were in the 1980s.
Imagine Max Headroom grappling with social media deepfakes and the metaverse. The possibilities are endless. It could be a brilliant satire of our current digital landscape.
Or it could be a cautionary tale about the dangers of losing ourselves in virtual worlds. Or perhaps a combination of both.
One thing's for sure, the conversation around Max Headroom is far from over.
Yeah.
And with the reboot on the horizon, I think we're going to see a resurgence of interest in this fascinating and complex character.
I agree. Max Headroom is a figure who continues to haunt our collective imagination.
Yeah.
A reminder that the digital world is not some separate realm. It's an extension of ourselves, a reflection of our hopes and fears, our aspirations and anxieties. And as technology continues to evolve, so too will the questions that Max Headroom raises.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the origins of the character to his enduring legacy and the upcoming reboot. But before we move on, I want to touch on another aspect of Max Headroom that I find fascinating, his influence on other artists and creators.
That's a great point. Max Headroom has become this cultural touchstone, a reference point for exploring the intersections of technology, media, and identity.
It's like he's this seed that was planted in the 1980s, and its tendrils have spread throughout popular culture, influencing music, film, literature, and even fashion.
Absolutely. And it's not just about direct imitation. It's about taking those core themes that Max Headroom embodied.
Right.
The satire, the anxieties about technology, the blurring of reality and simulation, and reinterpreting them in new and exciting ways.
Can you give us some specific examples of artists or creators who have been influenced by Max Headroom?
Of course. One of the most prominent examples is the musician Eminem. In his 2013 music video for Rap God, Eminem actually appears as Max Headroom, complete with the stuttering and glitching effects. It's a clear homage to the character and a testament to his enduring influence on pop culture.
That's right. And it's not just about the visual similarities.
Right.
Eminem's lyrics and Rap God also touch on themes of technology fame and the power of language, which are all elements that were present in Max Headroom's world as well. It's like he's channeling the spirit of Max Headroom to explore the complexities of our digital age.
Exactly. And we see similar echoes of Max Headroom in the work of other artists and creators.
Right.
You can find his influence in cyberpunk literature and video games and graphic design, even in fashion. It's like his aesthetic has become shorthand for a certain kind of futuristic, tech-savvy sensibility.
It's fascinating to see how he's been reinterpreted and reimagined over the years.
Yeah.
How his image and his ideas have permeated our culture. It speaks to the power of a truly iconic character, someone who transcends time and genre and continues to resonate with audiences long after their initial appearance.
And it's not just about the visuals or the aesthetic. It's about the questions that Max Headroom raised, the anxieties he tapped into,
Yeah.
the challenges he presented to our understanding of technology and our place in the digital world. Those questions are as relevant today as they were in the 1980s, if not more so.
And that, I think, is the true measure of Max Headroom's legacy. He wasn't just a character. He was a catalyst for a conversation that we're still having today about the role of technology in our lives, the potential for both good and evil, and the choices we make that shape our digital future.
Well said. And as we move further into the 21st century with all its technological advancements and challenges, I think we'll continue to look back to Max Headroom for guidance, for inspiration, and for a reminder that the digital world is not some separate realm. It's an extension of ourselves, a reflection of our hopes and fears, our dreams and nightmares.
And perhaps in understanding Max Headroom, we can better understand ourselves and the world we're creating.
That's a profound thought and a fitting way to wrap up this part of our deep dive. But we're not done yet. We still have much more to explore. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Max Headroom. We've journeyed through his origins, his satire, that unnerving broadcast signal intrusion, and even touched upon his influence on other artists. But now I think it's time to step back and consider his broader cultural significance. Why, after all these years, does Max Headroom still matter?
It's a question worth pondering, isn't it? And I think the answer lies in the fact that Max Headroom wasn't just a character or a TV show. He was a reflection of a particular cultural moment, a moment when our relationship with technology was undergoing a profound shift.
He emerged during this transitional period when the analog world was giving way to the digital, and he captured that sense of both excitement and anxiety that came with it. It was a time of rapid change, and people were grappling with the implications of these new technologies.
Precisely. And Max Headroom, with his glitching appearance, his unpredictable behavior, and his sharp satirical wit, became the embodiment of that unease. He was a symbol of the anxieties we felt about the digital age, the fear that we were losing control, that technology was becoming this force that we couldn't fully comprehend or manage.
And those anxieties, as we've discussed, haven't gone away. In fact, they've only intensified in the decades since Max Headroom first appeared. Think about it. AI misinformation, the metaverse. It's like we're living in a hyper-realized version of Max Headroom's world now.
It's almost as if his creators tapped into something fundamental about the human psyche, something that transcends specific technologies or historical periods. That fear of the unknown, that fascination with the power of technology, that unease about the blurring lines between reality and simulation, these are timeless themes that continue to resonate with us today.
And Max Headroom, in a way, gave us a language to talk about these anxieties, a way to process these complex and often unsettling changes that were happening around us.
Yeah.
He made us laugh, he made us think, and he made us question the world we were creating.
Absolutely. And I think that's why he continues to resonate with audiences today. He speaks to our deepest anxieties about the world we're creating, even as he entertains and provokes us. He's a reminder that technology is a double-edged sword, a tool that can be used for good or evil, for connection or isolation, for creativity or destruction.
And that's a message that's more relevant now than ever. We're facing unprecedented challenges in the digital age, from climate change to social inequality to the rise of authoritarianism. And technology is playing a central role in all of these challenges.
You're right. And Max Headroom, with his satirical wit and his uncanny ability to see through the hype and the spin, reminds us to be critical, to question authority, and to demand accountability from those who wield power in the digital age.
He was a jester, a provocateur, and ultimately a prophet, warning us about the potential pitfalls of the digital world. And even though his shows ended decades ago, his legacy continues to inspire us to think differently about technology, to be mindful of its impact on our lives, and to use it in ways that benefit humanity rather than harm it.
And speaking of legacies, we can't overlook the fact that Max Headroom is making a comeback with a reboot of the series in development. I'm curious to see how the creators will tackle these complex and nuanced themes for a modern audience.
Me too. It's a daunting task. But I have faith that they'll be able to capture the essence of what made Max Headroom so compelling, while also updating the concept for a world that's vastly different from the one he inhabited in the 1980s.
I agree. And I think they have a unique opportunity to explore the ways in which technology has evolved and impacted our lives in the decades since Max Headroom first appeared. Imagine Max Headroom navigating the complexities of social media, grappling with deepfakes and virtual influencers, or even venturing into the uncharted territories of the metaverse.
The possibilities are truly endless. It could be a brilliant satire of our current digital landscape, a cautionary tale about the dangers of losing ourselves in virtual worlds, or perhaps a combination of both. I have a feeling the creators of the reboot will surprise us.
I hope so. And I hope they'll stay true to the spirit of the original Max Headroom with its blend of wit, intelligence, social commentary, and thought-provoking questions. Because ultimately, that's what made Max Headroom such a powerful and enduring figure, his ability to make us think, to question, and to challenge our assumptions about the world around us.
And as we conclude this deep dive into the world of Max Headroom, I encourage all of you watching to continue that conversation. What are your thoughts about Max Headroom, his legacy, and what you hope to see in the reboot? Let us know in the comments below. We always appreciate your insights and perspectives.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe to the VSOW YouTube channel for more explorations into intriguing topics. We have a lot of exciting content planned, so hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of Max Headroom. We hope you found it as fascinating and thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, this is VSOW signing off.